Imagine you are falling through the pitch-black sky over the Middle East. Your multi-million-dollar aircraft is gone, shattered into burning pieces of metal miles above the ground. You have pulled the ejection handle, the parachute has deployed, and you are drifting down into a country that your government is currently bombing. You hit the ground, you unclip your harness, you check your radio, and you look up at a sky that for the last 50 years belonged entirely to the United States military, but tonight belongs to someone else. Right now, as you are watching this, an American pilot is sitting somewhere in the dark, inside Iranian territory, waiting for a rescue that might not be able to reach him. The Pentagon just confirmed that a United States Air Force F15E Strike Eagle was shot down over Iran. One crew member, the weapons systems officer, has been successfully recovered by a daring combat search and rescue team. The other, the pilot, is still missing. And the silence coming out of Washington right now is the most terrifying sound in the world. I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes. Do not click away, because the mainstream media is going to cover this as a tragedy, as a single isolated incident of a plane going down in a war zone. They are going to show you file footage of an F-15 and talk about the search efforts. But what they are not going to tell you is the real story. The story of why that F-15E was flying over Iran in the first place, why it was completely blind to the missile that killed it, and why the American military machine is currently hemorrhaging multi-million-dollar aircraft at a rate that is fundamentally breaking the arithmetic of Western air dominance. If you want to keep accessing real information, meaning if you want me to continue bringing you these videos without interruption, the greatest support you can give me is this. After subscribing, hit the join button that appears right there and consider helping out with even a small amount. I will keep delivering the truth to you. Thank you in advance. Let us start with the most obvious question. Why was an older, fourth-generation F-15E Strike Eagle flying a highly dangerous penetration mission deep inside Iranian airspace? Where were the F-35s? Where were the stealth fighters that cost $100 million apiece and were sold to the American public as an invisible, invincible shield that no adversary could ever touch? To understand the shootdown of the F-15E today, you have to look at what happened to the stealth fleet over the past several weeks. Because the F-15E was only flying today because the F-35 program has suffered catastrophic, humiliating failures in this exact same airspace. Just weeks ago, an American F-35A conducting a strike mission over Iranian territory was struck by hostile fire and forced to execute an emergency landing at an undisclosed base in the Middle East. It was the first time in the aircraft's operational history that an F-35 sustained damage from hostile fire in combat, and the Israelis have fared even worse. Israel lost 3 F-35I stealth fighters in a single week. 3 jets, $300 million in American taxpayer money, gone. The first one was tracked and obliterated by an S-400 system using VHF radar, a long wavelength radar frequency that the F-35's stealth geometry was simply never optimized to defeat. The pilot had exactly 18 seconds of warning before a missile traveling at over 3 kilometers per second destroyed his aircraft. The Pentagon's response to those Israeli stealth losses wasn't just a press release, it was a structural halt. The Pentagon suspended F-35 deliveries to Israel, not paused, not delayed, suspended. When you lose confidence in your $1.7 trillion stealth fighter program, you have to fall back on what you have left. You have to send in the F-15E Strike Eagles. These jets are fast, they carry an enormous payload, but they are not stealthy. They appear on radar screens, and they rely on massive situational awareness to survive. They need to know exactly where the enemy radars are, and exactly where the enemy missiles are, so they can avoid them. But the pilot who went down today did not have that situational awareness. He was flying blind. And to understand why he was blind, I need to take you back to an event that the Pentagon spent 6 hours trying to cover up as a mechanical failure before the truth came out. Weeks ago, a $270 million American E-3 Sentry AWACS aircraft was shot down over the Persian Gulf. 17 Americans died in the water. That aircraft was the brain of American air operations. Its massive 30-foot radar dome tracked more than 600 targets simultaneously, telling fighter pilots exactly what was in the sky and where the threats were. Iran shot it down from 160 miles away using a Bavar 373 surface-to-air missile, proving that the safety buffer American surveillance planes relied on for 50 years was a total illusion. When the AWACS went down, America lost its eyes. The remaining AWACS planes were pulled back to 300 miles off the coast, where their radar pictures are severely degraded. As a result, fighter pilots, like the F15E crew shot down today, now have to rely heavily on their own onboard radars, which see tens of miles, not hundreds. They are squinting in the dark. And in the Middle East right now, squinting gets people killed. Now add another layer of absolute technological chaos to the airspace where our missing pilot is currently hiding. Iran has been running the most sophisticated GPS spoofing operation in maritime and aviation history since the moment this conflict began. They are manipulating satellite navigation signals across the entire region. This electronic warfare is so severe that it has paralyzed over 1,750 commercial ships in the Persian Gulf, tricking their navigation computers into thinking they are sailing over dry land or sitting inside heavily guarded nuclear facilities. Aviation analysts have officially confirmed that commercial aircraft flying routes over the eastern Arabian Peninsula are being directly hit by this exact same GPS spoofing. Think about the sheer horror of being an F-15E pilot in that environment. Your stealth capability doesn't exist, your AWACS support is gone, and the very GPS system you rely on to navigate, to target, and to plan your escape route might be feeding you fabricated coordinates. When that pilot ejected today, he may have thought he was steering his parachute toward a safe extraction zone, only to realize upon landing that his instruments had been systematically lying to him. And the threat isn't just coming from the enemy. The skies are so saturated, so confused, and so degraded that coalition forces are shooting each other. On March 2nd, Kuwaiti air defenses shot down 3 American F-15s in a friendly fire incident. 6 crew members survived that disaster. Why did it happen? Because the early warning radar arrays at Ali al-Salem Air Base and Camp Arifjan had already been completely destroyed by Iranian strikes. Without those radars, the Kuwaitis were operationally blind, unable to distinguish American fighter jets from inbound Iranian cruise missiles. That is the environment the American military is currently operating in. That is the meat grinder we just sent another F-15E into. Let us look at the brutal, unglamorous mathematics of what just happened, because wars are ultimately decided by math. The F-15E Strike Eagle is an extraordinarily expensive asset. The aircraft itself, the years of training for the pilot and the weapons officer, the advanced avionics, we are talking about an investment of well over $100 million. The missile that shot it down, likely the Sayad 4B used in the Bavar 373 system, costs approximately $2 million per unit. Iran is spending $2 million to destroy a $100 million aircraft. That is a cost exchange ratio of 50 to 1 in Iran's favor. If you look at the F-22 Raptors, which cost roughly $350 million per aircraft, the ratio jumps to 175 to 1. As military strategists call it, this is cost imposition, and Iran is currently executing a masterclass in it. They do not need to win every engagement. If they have to fire 15 cheap missiles just to score a single hit on an American jet, they still come out financially ahead by massive margins. The United States cannot sustain that expenditure indefinitely. The United States cannot replace what it loses on any timeline that matters, and it is not just the aircraft we are running out of. We are running out of the very missiles required to defend our troops, our bases, and our rescue helicopters. If you are wondering why the Combat Search and Rescue (CSR) operation for this missing pilot is so incredibly perilous, you have to understand the catastrophic logistics failure that occurred in the Red Sea. Recently, the USNS Robert E. Peary, a massive military supply ship, was struck and sunk by Iranian anti-ship ballistic and cruise missiles. That ship wasn't carrying food or spare parts. It was carrying the single most critical commodity in modern warfare: interceptor missiles. At the bottom of the Red Sea right now sits an estimated 1,200 Standard Missile 2s, 400 Standard Missile 3s, 800 Standard Missile 6s, and 6,000 Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles. 30,000 missiles in total, valued at $58 billion, sent to the bottom by 5 Iranian weapons that cost roughly $5.2 million combined. Replacing those interceptors at current manufacturing speeds would take approximately 47 years of production. Because of that sinking, the American destroyers in the region are operating with depleted magazines. They are burning through their remaining interceptors faster than they can be replaced. The next supply ship altered its course entirely around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 14 days to its transit just to avoid being sunk. This means the American military has dramatically reduced air defense coverage. If you want to send a squadron of helicopters and heavily armed support aircraft deep into Iranian territory to rescue one missing pilot, you need defensive coverage. You need interceptors, and right now, the United States Navy is critically short of them. Where do those rescue teams even launch from? Every single American staging ground in the region is currently under relentless, highly precise bombardment. The Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American base in the region housing 10,000 troops, was partially evacuated twice before this war even began and has been targeted repeatedly. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia was struck, wounding 12 American soldiers and damaging a refueling tanker aircraft on the tarmac. That tanker is what keeps American fighters and rescue helicopters in the air over Iran. When you damage a tanker, you shorten the reach of American air power. The U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain took multiple Iranian missile strikes. The U.S. Embassy in Kuwait City took a direct Iranian missile strike, forcing Secretary of State Marco Rubio to order it closed. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE was hit with long-range K-bar Shakan ballistic missiles. Our troops are bleeding. 13. American service members have been killed in this conflict, and over 200 have been wounded. When the helicopters lift off to find this missing F-15 pilot, they are taking off from bases with cratered runways, operating under the constant threat of hypersonic glide vehicles and swarm cruise missiles. Let us talk about the missing pilot himself. What happens if Iran gets to him before we do? This is the strategic nightmare that keeps the Pentagon awake at night. A captured American pilot is not just a prisoner of war. He is unprecedented strategic leverage. He is a propaganda victory that Iran will broadcast across the entire Middle East. In a war where Iran has meticulously constructed a regional narrative about the limits of American and Israeli power, capturing an American pilot alive would be the ultimate prize. Remember how Iran reacted when Israel assassinated Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Israel celebrated it as a strategic victory. But Iran doesn't process martyrdom the way Western governments do. They took Nasrallah's name, painted it on a new ballistic missile, and used it to vaporize 3 F-35 stealth fighters inside a hardened concrete shelter at Nevatim Air Base. They weaponized the loss. If they capture a living American pilot, they will weaponize him. They will put him on state television. They will parade the wreckage of the $100 million F-15E. They will use him to humiliate the United States in front of China, Russia, and every Gulf monarchy that currently relies on American security guarantees. And who exactly would Washington negotiate with to get this pilot back? The political decapitation of Iran's leadership by Israeli strikes has created a dangerous vacuum. Israel assassinated Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the opening day of the war. They followed that by assassinating Ali Larijani, the 67-year-old secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, the man who had led nuclear negotiations with the West and was the single most capable figure in Tehran who could have navigated an off-ramp. Then they killed the intelligence minister, Esmail Khatib. The people who could have sat across a table and negotiated a prisoner exchange or a ceasefire have been systematically buried. The new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is a hardliner who issues uncompromising demands from the shadows without ever appearing on video. Donald Trump has stated publicly to reporters that he simply does not know who to negotiate with inside Iran. We have a missing American pilot behind enemy lines, and the diplomatic backchannels required to safely extract him have been bombed out of existence. All of this is happening while the global economy is screaming in pain. The economic blast radius of this conflict has already touched every single person watching this video. The Strait of Hormuz is functionally dead. It wasn't just closed by threats, it was physically blocked. Iran sank 3 massive commercial oil tankers right in the navigable channel of the strait, and the 60 to 90 sailors who were on board were left floating in the 35-degree water of an active engagement zone where rescue vessels could not reach them. You cannot issue diplomatic statements to lift thousands of tons of steel off the seabed. 20% of the world's daily oil supply is physically blocked. Brent crude oil surged past $118 a barrel, climbing 50% higher than pre-war levels. European benchmark gas futures jumped 50% overnight when Qatar halted production. Israel struck the South Pars gas field in Iran, the largest natural gas reserve on the planet. Within hours, Iran retaliated by striking Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, the single largest LNG complex on Earth, causing extensive structural damage. Then they hit Saudi Arabia's Yanbu refinery on the Red Sea. Then they hit 2 Kuwaiti oil refineries. Then they struck the Habshan gas facility in the UAE, shutting down the only pipeline that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. The International Energy Agency authorized an unprecedented emergency release of 400 million barrels of oil, but it was nothing but a financial band-aid on a structural fracture. Global shipping conglomerates have entirely suspended operations. Marine underwriters have raised war risk premiums by 600%. The cost to grow food is skyrocketing because a third of the world's fertilizer trade relies on the Gulf, and those supply lines are severed. And the United States is standing in the middle of this economic inferno, bleeding multi-million-dollar aircraft and asking its service members to absorb the physical risks of a strategy that has visibly failed. Let me ask you to consider the global audience watching the smoke rise from that F-15E today. Beijing is watching with intense professional interest. China's entire military doctrine in the Pacific is built around anti-access and area denial, keeping American aircraft carriers and fighter jets far away from Taiwan using advanced missiles. The Chinese military just watched Iran, a heavily sanctioned nation with a fraction of America's defense budget, successfully shoot down an AWACS surveillance plane, damage an F-35, and completely destroy an F-15E Strike Eagle. They just watched Iranian ballistic missiles obliterate 14 highly advanced air defense systems in Israel, including 5 American Patriot batteries, in a single night. Russia is watching from Moscow. They are currently telling their export customers that Russian-designed radars and air defense systems can easily defeat American stealth and air superiority. After this week, those claims are no longer marketing. They are marketing with undeniable smoking evidence. Every defense ministry on the planet that has been quietly investing in long-wavelength radar networks just had their procurement decisions validated. The strategic reverberations of this single shootdown extend far beyond Iran. So where do we go from here? The search and rescue operation for the missing pilot is ongoing. Every asset the United States military can muster is likely tearing the airspace apart trying to find him before the IRGC does. But they are doing it with depleted missile magazines. They are doing it from bases that are under daily ballistic bombardment. They are doing it in an environment where GPS tells them lies, where radar blind spots are being ruthlessly exploited by the enemy, and where the very interceptors meant to protect them are sitting at the bottom of the Red Sea. The United States Navy's carrier strike groups are still sitting safely outside the Strait of Hormuz, refusing near-daily requests from the commercial shipping industry for military escorts, because the Navy has fundamentally assessed that the waters are simply too dangerous to enter. When the most heavily funded, technologically advanced Navy in human history runs the numbers and decides a specific strait is legally and physically too dangerous to enter, that strait is closed. And when the most advanced Air Force in human history starts losing its premier aircraft to cheap, domestically manufactured missiles, air superiority is no longer a given. It is a desperate daily fight for survival. The story they will tell you on the evening news is that an F-15 went down and we are looking for the pilot. The story I have just told you is the reality. The F-15 went down because the stealth shield failed, the AWACS eyes were blinded, the interceptor magazines were drained, the radar bases were shattered, and the fundamental assumption of American military invincibility in the Middle East was systematically dismantled by an adversary that spent 20 years preparing for exactly this moment. One pilot has been rescued, one is still out there in the dark, and millions of people across the globe are about to pay the price for the decisions that put him there. Stay close to this channel. I will be tracking the search and rescue operation, the economic fallout, and the inevitable retaliation in real time. Make sure you are subscribed, like this video so the algorithm pushes the truth out to people who need to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Has the United States passed the point of no return in this conflict? Is there a diplomatic off-ramp left, or are we watching the final collapse of Western deterrence in the Middle East? I read every single comment. Stay sharp, stay awake, and I will see you in the next one.